welcome to the final video of film posters. We have finally made it, and actually in this section we're going to be looking at film marketing and the film industry as a whole, because this is for component 1 section B. Now this should be slightly quicker to get through than the previous videos because section B doesn't have as many marks available to it as section A, and the questions tend to be broken down into smaller steps. So you'll see that for some of the questions there is literally just a right or a wrong answer, which obviously makes it quicker for us to go through. My advice would be to test yourself as you're going along with this video, because if you find that there are answers that you just don't know or that you get wrong, then it will tell you where you need to be putting in that revision and what you need to have a look for. Now we're quite lucky that component 1 section B of the sample assessment materials, which will be in the description box below, actually deals with film industry for part of this, so we don't actually have to edit or adapt any of the questions, but you'll see that when we get to question 4, which is the audience question, I have had to adapt them, and I'll go through that as we get there. So let's start off then. Question 1. Name the organisation that regulates film in Britain. It's 1 mark, so you really only need a 1-word answer to this. And you'll see that the mark scheme says you would be awarded for just putting down BBFC or for expanding it into British Board of Film Classification. If you don't put either of those down, you cannot get a mark. So this is an example of where it is literally a right or a wrong answer. Question 3b, 12 and 12a are examples of age certificates in the UK. You need to give 2 other examples of age certificates used in the UK. 2 marks, you get 1 mark for each. And again, it is as simple as just listing one from U, PG, 15, 18, or even R18 you would be credited for. So all you have to do is put 2 of those down and you would get the mark. Again, this is a right or wrong answer. So if you haven't put any of those down, then you are going to end up losing marks here, and these are really easy marks for you to pick up. Okay, now 3C requires a little bit more of an explanation. We've got 2 marks here, so you do need to give sort of 2 differences, and the way that I would do it is to have the sort of 12 explanation and then the 12A explanation perhaps on different lines, just so you know that you have given those 2 different sort of differences, and that way you stand a better chance of getting those 2 marks. Okay, you would be awarded for saying that the 12 certificate is for video releases only. You also need to say, to get that 2 marks, that the 12A certificate means that children under the age of 12 have got to be accompanied by an adult for films that are shown at the cinema. You would only get 1 mark if you said that the 12 certificate is for home viewing only, that the 12A certificate is for films shown at the cinema. If you said both of those in the same sentence, you'd only get 1 mark. And that children under 12 must be accompanied by an adult to see a 12A film at the cinema. If you only put that down, you would only get 1 mark. Okay, you have to have both in order to get those full 2 marks. Hopefully that makes sense. Now the question that requires a little bit more explanation here is a 12-mark question. And this is where you're sort of drawing upon your wider knowledge, explaining why a film might be given 12 or a 12A or a 12 certificate, and you have to refer to Spectre to support your points. You can bring in other examples, but you have to make reference to Spectre in order to be fully credited for this answer. The way that I would do it is to sort of think of it as 2 sort of 5-mark style answers together. So double the amount of space that you would require for like a 5-mark question, basically. Okay, double the amount of detail. So let's have a look and see how we've got on then. Originally, Spectre was categorised as a 15, which would limit the audience to those aged 15 and over. Part of the reason for this was the level of violence that was within the film, including scenes such as eye gouging and suicide. However, the production team cut and edited the scenes so that they were heavily insinuated what was happening without showing the violent act itself. This enabled the rating to be lowered as the violence was as well. Other descriptors that the BBC look for include the language used within the production, but more importantly for an audience as young as 12, the level of drug, gambling and alcohol abuse used. They have a responsibility on filmmakers not to encourage or glamorise these behaviours in audiences that are more vulnerable and impressionable, particularly with a character such as Bond, who's portrayed with a lot of desirable qualities that an audience might find, such as his wealth and status. So here's the mark scheme for that question. We need to give an excellent, detailed and accurate knowledge and understanding of regulation in the film industry, which I believe I did. and you also need to give an excellent thorough reference to the set product. Not sure how well I did that one. I definitely included that appropriate use of subject-specific terminology, so I would probably award myself 10, maybe 11 marks for this. But by all means, go back to my answer, have a look through it, see what you think, use this mark scheme to help you, and pop your answer, what you think I would get, in the comments section below. All right, question 4. We're now on audiences. And as you can see for the sample assessment materials, they base this on the Archers. So I've changed the questions to which company produced Spectre. So you can see how there's a link between these two questions here. And I'm basically just changing the focus here from the Archers to Spectre. Identify one audience for Spectre. Explain 2 ways in which Spectre is aimed at the audience you have identified. And then explain why audiences watch films such as Spectre, refer to the uses and gratifications theory in our response. So let's deal with these one at a time. Which company produces Spectre? Eon Productions. You would get a mark. Again, it's a right or wrong answer, so you would get a mark for basically just mentioning a production company. For something like Spectre, which has got multiple production companies, you would be credited for Columbia, Eon or MGM. Now, last year there was some confusion as to whether or not Sony was one of the production companies. It is listed in the fact sheet, or it was listed in the original fact sheet. They may well have changed it as a production company and a company that worked on Spectre. But looking at the IMDb listings, Sony is a distributor, not a production company, so you have to be careful there. IMDb is a fantastic resource for if you're ever confused about production companies or directors or that sort of thing. Question 2, 4B. Identify one audience for Spectre. Again, 1 mark. Now, I would always, if you are asked for an audience, break it down fully. 16 to 60 plus, men, A to E on the Acorn or ABC1 scale, and then aspirers or succeeders on the 4C system. And the reason that I would do that is because what will happen if you're asked for an audience is that you will be given a really long list as an examiner of things that you can look for, and you really need to be specific. This is actually less specific, this mark scheme, than the one for last year's exam, which asked about an audience for the Sun newspaper. 16 to 60 plus wouldn't have got you a mark on that paper last year. Men wouldn't have got you a mark on that paper last year. You have to be specific. So the more you break it down, the more likely you are that you're going to hit something on that mark scheme. In this instance, obviously the older demographic, the socioeconomic group, and you might also get awarded for aspirers or succeeders as well. Now 4C has got a longer mark scheme. So 4C, as you can see at the top, is linked to 4B, and your response is required to explain how Spectre, in this instance, is aimed at the audience identified. No marks should be awarded for explanations aimed at a different audience. So if you have linked questions like we've got here, you have to be aware of what the question is asking. If you talk about a different audience in 4C, you will get 0. And they are that strict with it. Okay, so you've got to be really, really careful. So we identified that 16 to 60 plus audience, which is what I'm going to break down here. One reason that the audience is so large is that the film is part of a franchise. This means that it would attract older audiences who have grown up with various installments. However, as it is a new release, it would also attract new fans to the production and provide a sense of family enjoyment, as audiences from the same family could attend together. Another way that the audience are targeted is through the protagonist. Bond is often displayed with high levels of wealth and status, so would appeal not only to those who have a similar level of wealth, but also those who want to attain it. Now, this is another reason why it's really useful to have such a broad audience, or rather such a broken down audience in that first part. If all you had put was men, you would struggle to find 2 ways to explain how Spectre appeals to that audience without repeating yourself. If you've got a really broken down audience, you can comment on the socioeconomic group as one reason and the age range as another reason. So you have, you help yourself by breaking down this audience rather than making it so brief. Another thing to point out, and I say this to my classes all the time, is that if it says 2 ways, do 2 paragraphs, or at least make sure that your reasons are on like completely separate lines, because it helps you to know that you have fully answered that question, and it makes it really, really clear to an examiner, this is one reason, this is another, and it helps then to sort of keep you focused and on track, and stands you in better stead for getting those higher marks. In terms of this question, 2 marks for each valid detailed explanation. I think I've given 2 valid details explanations, so I would give myself 2 marks there. Again, if you feel like contradicting me, please pop a comment down in the comment section below. I do read all of them, so I will get back to you if I sort of agree or want to perhaps extend the debate on the marks. Okay, 4D. So again, longer questions here. If it mentions a specific theory, like the uses and gratifications, you have to mention it. If you don't mention it, you cannot get above 3 marks. Okay, so you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't read the question carefully and you're not jotting down or commenting on things that are given to you in the question. Okay, why audiences watch films such as Spectre, referring to uses and gratifications? Now, there are obviously 5 points on the uses and gratifications theory, and I am not going to go through each and every one for a 12-mark question. Pick 2 or 3 at most and explain those. So, the prime reason that audiences watch films is in order to be entertained. This is one reason why there are so many genres, as entertainment is subjective for individual audiences. Spectre, for example, would appeal to audiences who like fast-paced linear narratives that involve high levels of suspense and action, as these are conventions recognisable to the genres of action, adventure and drama. There are also genres that span the entire franchise, which audiences are familiar with and therefore more likely to enjoy. Audiences also want to escape from their daily lives. There's something that is highly evident within the Spectre film and the Bond franchise, as the protagonist is not entirely relatable to the audience. It is unlikely that the audience are going to be secret agents themselves, and therefore the level of excitement and danger that Bond faces provides a level of aspiration for the audience, and also allows them to live through the character vicariously, particularly when they know that ultimately he will be the victor at the end of the film. Furthermore, the repeated elements within the franchise provide security for the audience who know what to expect, therefore allowing them to escape their own lives within the film without being too emotionally affected at the end. Now, I know I use an awful lot of like complicated language where I don't actually need to. One of the reasons that I do that, I guess it's just the English teacher in me, is that I really want you guys to sort of broaden your vocabulary as well. Listening to other people and taking in different sources helps to vary the words and phrases that you use within your answers. That doesn't matter too much for media, but for English, obviously that's really important that you vary and broaden your vocabulary. So words like subjective and vicariously, I'll let you guys look up the meanings for those, but I am going to start using that language more within my videos so that you guys get a broader experience as well, and it helps you in your other subjects. The mark scheme here though, what have I done? What have I ticked? Well, I've definitely given accurate reference to the uses and gratifications theory and used that subject-specific terminology throughout, which I've highlighted for you. I do think I've given a thorough understanding of audiences and why they use a set product, and I also think that I've given accurate knowledge of audiences in relation to the product. If you disagree with me though, or you want to clarify why you think I've done this, pop those comments in that comment section below and I'll get back to you, because I do see every single one of the comments and I do respond in some way, shape or form to every comment that's out there. Again, loads of key terms today, so if you're unsure of any of these key terms, if you've not used them before, please go and look them up, make yourself some note cards, or see if you can fit them into your own answers as you're tackling some of these questions. And that's it, guys. Please subscribe, hit the button down below, particularly if you're studying Luther, because that will be the next topic that I work on. So I will start getting those videos up as soon as possible. If you want to, leave a question, comment or reply down below. Hit the like button if you feel like I'm doing a halfway decent job. And if you want to get in touch on Twitter, it's media_.